With a single touch, I broke her invincible armor. The alien warrior trembled. This is impossible. Daniel Clark stood near the edge of the wide observation hall, keeping his hands folded behind his back. The hall was built by alien hands, tall and sharp, with metal arches that curved like the ribs of a giant beast. Glowing symbols moved slowly across the walls, shifting colors as different species walked by. To Daniel, it felt cold and heavy, like the station itself was watching him. He was the only human in this section of the station. That alone made him stand out. Humans were rare here, and when they did appear, they were usually diplomats or traders who stayed close to their escorts. Daniel had no escort. He wore a plain gray uniform with no weapons and no rank symbols. Compared to the towering alien warriors around him, he looked small and thin. Voices echoed through the hall. Many were loud, sharp, and full of laughter that did not sound friendly. Daniel did not need a translator to understand the tone. They were laughing at him. A group of armored alien fighters stood near the center platform. Their armor looked alive, shifting slightly as if it breathed with them. Plates overlapped like scales, glowing faintly with inner light. Among them stood Karathra. She was taller than the others, her posture straight and proud. Her armor was darker, marked with old scars that had healed into smooth patterns. She was known across the sector as an undefeated warrior. Karathra turned her head slowly toward Daniel. Her eyes, bright and sharp, locked onto him. Her lips curled in what passed for a smile among her kind. "That is the human?" she asked, her voice amplified by the hall. "This fragile thing?" Laughter spread again. Daniel felt it roll over him like a wave, but his face did not change. He had learned long ago that reacting only made things worse. Near one of the side stations, Lisa Brown watched the scene with tight fists. She was another human, older than Daniel, with short hair and tired eyes. She worked as a cultural analyst and had been on the station for years. She had seen this kind of treatment before, but it never stopped bothering her. "They enjoy this too much," she muttered to herself. Daniel shifted his weight slightly, listening without looking. He had been assigned here as a technical observer, nothing more. His job was to watch alien combat systems, learn how they worked, and report back to Earth. Officially, humans were still considered a minor species, useful for trade and information but not for war. Unofficially, Daniel knew that label was wrong. The Alien Council platform lit up, and a tall figure stepped forward. This one wore long robes instead of armor. Its voice was calm but carried easily through the hall. "Let the record show that the human representative is present," the council speaker said. "Today's gathering is a demonstration of strength and order." Daniel raised his eyes briefly. He could feel thousands of gazes on him. Some were curious, most were mocking, and a few were openly hostile. Karathra stepped forward, her armor making a low, steady hum as it moved. "Strength must be displayed," she said, "so that the lesser species remember their place." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The speaker turned slightly toward him. "Human Daniel Clark, you are assigned as an observer only. Do you understand?" "Yes," Daniel replied. His voice was steady, clear, and calm. It sounded small in the vast hall, but it did not shake. Another wave of laughter followed. Karathra tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle she had already solved. "You do not tremble," she said. "Do humans not feel fear?" "We do," Daniel answered. "We just don't always show it." That drew a few surprised murmurs. Lisa allowed herself a small breath of relief. At least he was not backing down. Karathra stepped closer, stopping just a few feet from him. Up close, her armor seemed even more impossible. Layers of energy shimmered under the surface, reacting to her movements. This was the armor said to be unbreakable, grown from rare materials and bonded to her nervous system. Entire armies had failed to scratch it. She looked down at him. "You are weak," she said simply. "Your bones would shatter from one strike. Your skin offers no protection." Daniel met her gaze. Maybe, he said. The simplicity of the answer confused her. She expected denial or anger. Instead, she saw acceptance. The council speaker raised a hand. Enough. This gathering is not for argument. But the damage was already done. Whispers moved through the crowd. The idea that a human could stand so calmly before Carethra did not fit the stories they told about humans. Daniel returned to his position at the edge of the hall. His heart was beating faster now, but his breathing stayed slow. He remembered training rooms on Earth, quiet places where he had learned to control his body in ways most humans never needed. He remembered instructors who spoke softly about survival, not victory. Lisa joined him a moment later. "You handled that well," she said quietly. "I didn't do anything," Daniel replied. "Sometimes that's enough," she said. She looked around before lowering her voice. "They are planning something. I can feel it," Daniel nodded. "I know." Across the hall, Carethra watched them speak. She felt an unfamiliar irritation. The human did not fit the image she carried in her mind. He was supposed to be loud or frightened, not calm and unreadable. One of her fellow warriors leaned toward her. "Shall we request a trial?" he asked. "It would amuse the council." Carethra's eyes remained on Daniel. "Yes," she said after a moment. "Let them see what true strength looks like." The council speaker soon announced a pause in the gathering. Smaller groups began to form, discussing trade, battles, and politics. Daniel felt the shift in the air. Something was moving beneath the surface. As he walked toward the human quarters, he noticed the way some aliens stepped aside, not out of respect but caution. Others stared openly, trying to understand him. Inside the quiet corridor, the noise of the hall faded. The walls here were plain, designed for mixed species. Daniel rested his hand against the cool surface for a moment, grounding himself. He was not here by accident. Earth had sent him because he understood something the others did not. Humans had never been the strongest or the fastest. Earth itself had forced them to adapt, to read danger, to survive against odds that never cared about fairness. Lisa caught up with him again. "If they challenge you," she said, "you can refuse. You are not a soldier." Daniel looked at her. "I know. Will you?" she asked. He thought of Carethra's armor, of the way the aliens laughed, of how humans were seen as weak tools instead of thinking beings. "I don't think they'll let me refuse," he said softly. Lisa sighed. "Then be careful." Daniel gave a small nod and continued down the corridor. Behind him, far back in the hall, Carethra's laughter echoed once more, full of confidence and promise of violence. Neither of them yet understood how much the balance of belief was about to change. Daniel Clark returned to his small quarters, but he could not rest. The noise of the hall, the laughter of the alien warriors, and the presence of Carethra lingered in his mind. He paced slowly, thinking about the council's words. Officially, he was only an observer. Unofficially, he was about to face something no human had ever faced before. The corridors of the station were wide but sterile. Walls of smooth metal reflected light in strange patterns, and the air hummed faintly with the station's energy core. Aliens of every shape passed him, some curious, some dismissive. He noticed the subtle gestures, the way some of the smaller species moved aside, almost as if sensing danger, and the way larger armored warriors turned their shoulders toward him, a silent show of readiness. The entire station seemed to have sensed his presence differently after the hall encounter. Lisa Brown followed him quietly. She had worked on the station for years, and she understood the politics, the subtle threats, and the traditions of the alien council. "They are not used to humans standing firm," she said, her voice low. "Most would collapse under their attention, but you didn't. That will make them watch you even closer." Daniel nodded. "I'm not trying to prove anything," he said. "I'm just observing, that's all." "Observation is often more powerful than fighting," Lisa replied. She stopped and faced him, her expression serious. "But in this case, you might not get the choice." He knew she was right. The council would see the human's calmness not as wisdom but as a challenge. Carethra's pride was vast, and she would not allow a human to exist in the same room without testing him. Later that day, the council called a special meeting. Daniel and Lisa were escorted to a smaller hall, less crowded but equally imposing. The walls pulsed faintly with energy, and a soft vibration ran through the floor. The council members were seated on elevated platforms. Their faces, or what passed for faces, were varied and strange. Some had multiple eyes, others glowed faintly, and all wore robes of rank that shimmered in motion. The council speaker rose again. "The human has shown unusual composure," he said. "While humans are known for weakness and fragility, this one does not tremble." "Shall we test the limits of human adaptability?" Carethra stepped forward, her armor whispering as it moved. "I volunteer," she said. "Let him face me. Let the human see the difference between flesh and true power." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some members nodded, others looked uncertain. The notion of a human standing before Carethra and not showing fear unsettled them. Daniel remained silent. He knew what was coming. The moment would not be about strength alone. The aliens relied on brute force, technology, and armor. Humans had something different: resilience, control, and instinctive precision. He thought back to his training, to the quiet drills on Earth where he had learned to sense energy flows, the rhythm of movement, and how to react without strength. "You may refuse," Lisa said quietly, leaning close. "You are not a soldier. This is only their challenge." "If I refuse, they will see it as fear," Daniel said. "And that would end what they already think of humans. Sometimes you have to face fear to survive it." The council made preparations for a demonstration, a controlled trial to show strength and hierarchy. The arena was a long chamber, shaped like a narrow corridor with observation balconies for the council and guests. The floor was reinforced, but clear, showing the faint patterns of alien technology underneath. Carethra entered first. Her armor adjusted automatically, settling like a second skin. Layers shifted and vibrated with a soft hum. The crowd watched as the living armor shimmered, the light moving across its surface like water. She was confident, proud, and certain she was untouchable. Daniel followed, alone and unarmed. His small frame seemed fragile next to Carethra's towering presence. Murmurs ran through the audience. Many expected a swift display, an embarrassing defeat, and then laughter, but Daniel did not hesitate. He stepped forward calmly, observing Carethra's movements. He noticed her stance, the slight shifts in weight, the way her armor reacted to motion. Every detail mattered. Every micro-movement was a clue. Carethra struck first, moving with speed that would have shattered most humans. Her armored fists came down like falling metal pillars. The audience gasped as her strikes hit the ground near Daniel, sending sparks and vibration through the reinforced floor. Daniel moved lightly, sidestepping with small, controlled steps. He did not attack. He did not raise his hands. He simply observed and adjusted. His training on Earth had taught him to wait, to sense the energy and momentum of an opponent before acting. Carethra struck again, faster this time, aiming directly for his chest. The force was immense, and most humans would have been knocked aside or crushed. But Daniel shifted his weight at the last moment, letting her strength pass through empty space. The audience's whispers grew louder. How could a human evade such power without tools, armor, or weapons? Daniel stayed calm. He felt his heart beat faster but did not let it control his actions. He watched Carethra's eyes, the subtle tension in her armor, the slight change in her balance. He could see a crack forming, not in the metal or energy, but in the confidence she had always carried. Carethra's strikes became more aggressive, faster, and more powerful. She expected fear, trembling, or hesitation. Instead, Daniel remained quiet, almost still. This confused her. The armor that had never failed now seemed heavier on her, cumbersome, reacting in ways it never had before. He began to feel a rhythm, a flow. The aliens relied on force, power, and armor. Humans relied on perception, adaptation, and control. Every move Karethra made had energy, weight, and momentum. If Daniel could connect with it, even briefly, he could shift the balance. The trial continued for several minutes, each second feeling longer than the last. The audience leaned forward. Aliens whispered to each other, noting the human's calmness, the lack of panic, the subtle adjustments he made. Some older warriors frowned. They had seen humans fight before, but never like this. Daniel's mind focused on the smallest details. The hum of the armor, the vibration through the floor, the air currents made by her movement. He did not fear. He felt anticipation, the kind that came before a crucial step. He knew the moment would come, a single opportunity. Karethra moved toward him again, a decisive strike aimed to end the trial. Daniel waited. Then, with one controlled step, he placed his hand lightly on her armor. The audience held their breath. The air seemed to change. The living armor reacted unpredictably. Energy pulses shifted and Karethra's stance wavered. For a moment, the impossible happened. The invincible armor showed signs of weakness. Karethra froze, eyes wide. She had never felt her armor fail. Her body trembled slightly. Daniel's hand did not push or strike. He simply connected, letting a controlled pulse of human adaptation flow through the touch. The murmurs grew louder. The aliens could not understand. The armor, undefeated for decades, was reacting to a human touch. Karethra stepped back, trying to regain balance, but something had changed. The confidence she carried for years faltered. She looked at Daniel with shock. The crowd whispered, some fearful, some amazed. The trial was not over, but the perception of strength had already shifted. Humans were no longer fragile observers. In that moment, one calm human had shown the possibility of adaptation, control, and resilience. Karethra, the proud warrior with invincible armor, had felt doubt for the first time. Daniel withdrew his hand slowly, remaining quiet and composed. The audience looked on, stunned into silence. No words could describe what had happened. Lisa stepped closer, her eyes wide. "You did it," she whispered. Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of what just occurred. The trial had not ended, but the first statement had been made. Humans were not as weak as the aliens believed. Karethra's voice finally broke the silence, sharp and trembling. "This is impossible," she said, almost to herself. The armor that had defined her identity and power had been tested by a human, and the results were shocking. The council members looked at each other, murmuring in alarm. They had never expected a human to affect an elite warrior in this way. Whispers spread through the station. A human had touched the untouchable. Daniel stood quietly, breathing slow, calm. He knew this was only the beginning. The trial, the challenge, and the understanding of human strength were just starting to unfold. And for the first time, the aliens were beginning to see humans in a way they never had before. The arena emptied slowly, but the impression remained. Karethra left with a tension in her steps, her pride shaken. Daniel returned to the observation hall, calm and silent, carrying the knowledge that humans were not only observers. They were adaptable, resilient, and capable of changing the course of belief with a single, controlled action. The station would never look at humans the same way again. Daniel Clark woke before dawn in his small quarters. The soft hum of the station's energy core filled the silence. The events of the previous trial repeated in his mind. Karethra's armor had faltered, not from force, but from something subtle, something human. He had not expected it to work so effectively, yet the moment had changed everything. The aliens' perception of humans had shifted, and Daniel felt the weight of what that meant. He dressed quickly, pulling on a simple uniform. He carried no weapons, no armor, only his mind and the training he had refined for years. He had to remain calm, focused, and ready. The council had not forgotten the trial. Whispers spread like wildfire, and many were already plotting their next moves. Humans were dangerous, not because they were strong, but because they were unpredictable. Lisa Brown arrived at his door, carrying a small datapad. "The council wants a full report," she said. "They think your touch was a fluke. They want to test it again, under observation this time." Daniel took the datapad and scanned it. The message was formal, precise, but the meaning was clear. The aliens could not accept what had happened and they wanted control over the outcome. "I expected that," he said. "I'm ready." "You have to be careful," Lisa warned. "They don't understand humans. Some of them will try to provoke you, just to see what happens." Daniel nodded. He knew provocation was likely. The council had built its entire culture on hierarchy and strength. A human-defying expectation was dangerous to that order. By mid-morning, the arena was prepared again. This time, the chamber was larger, with observation platforms for the council, scientists, and select spectators. Karethra stood at the center, her armor glowing softly. She moved with the same confidence, yet there was a subtle tension in her shoulders, a quiet hesitation that had never been there before. Daniel stepped forward alone. He did not carry weapons or wear armor. The aliens murmured, some confused, some still mocking, but none dared approach him. He moved slowly, deliberately, studying the rhythm of the arena, the placement of energy fields, and the subtle changes in Karethra's posture. The council speaker's voice echoed through the hall. "The human has returned," he said. "We will observe, not interfere. Let the trial continue." Karethra's eyes fixed on Daniel. She was silent, her pride intact, but the doubt lingered. She had never been challenged like this. She raised her hands, preparing to strike. Energy flowed through the armor, creating faint ripples across the surface. The spectators leaned forward. Daniel waited. He could feel the energy in the room, the flow of movement from Karethra, and even the anticipation of the audience. Humans had evolved to sense patterns, to predict movement and energy, to survive where brute strength was useless. He had learned to channel that ability, and now it was time to use it fully. Karethra struck first. Her fist moved faster than the eye could follow, a blur of armored power. Sparks flew as her gauntlet struck the reinforced floor. Daniel shifted lightly, letting the strike pass harmlessly past him. He did not fight, he observed. Each movement of her armor revealed subtle weaknesses, patterns in the energy flow, moments where it reacted to force rather than controlling it. The crowd was silent. The energy of the arena was tense, almost electric. No one had ever seen a human endure such attacks and remain calm. Some aliens whispered, questioning their assumptions about humans. Others looked at Karethra with a mixture of surprise and fear. Daniel continued to move lightly, always observing, never attacking. His focus was absolute. He felt the armor's vibrations, the weight of each strike, the energy that flowed through the metal and through Karethra herself. He did not fear. He did not rush. He waited for the exact moment. Then it came. A subtle shift in Karethra's stance, almost imperceptible. Her armor had reacted to her own overconfidence, creating a brief opening. Daniel stepped forward and placed his hand lightly on her chest. The armor responded immediately, not to force, but to the human pulse that flowed through the touch. Energy rippled and shifted, destabilizing the layers. Karethra froze, her eyes wide with shock. She had never felt her armor falter. The audience gasped. Whispers turned to exclamations. Karethra struggled to regain control, but the armor reacted faster than her will could command. The energy layers flickered, small cracks forming as the alien's own systems were disrupted. She stepped back, trembling. The human had touched her and the impossible had happened. Daniel remained calm, his hand raised only slightly, connecting without force. The crowd watched, mesmerized. The unthinkable was happening before them. A human, fragile and unarmed, had broken the rhythm of an elite warrior's armor. The council members leaned forward, their expressions unreadable. They had anticipated a quick display of domination, but now the narrative was changing. The human was no longer weak, the elite warrior no longer untouchable. Karethra finally spoke, her voice trembling. This cannot be." She stepped back, lowering her hands. The armor still shimmered, but the confidence she carried for decades had been shaken. She looked at Daniel, trying to understand what had occurred. Daniel withdrew his hand slowly. He did not speak. He did not boast. He simply stood, calm and composed, letting the moment speak for itself. The audience remained silent, absorbing the reality of what they had seen. Humans had been underestimated for centuries. They were not physically superior, not armored like the elites, but they possessed something aliens had never considered: control, adaptability, and the ability to exploit patterns and energy in ways no armor could defend against. Lisa stepped forward, her eyes wide. "You have done more than survive," she whispered. "You have shown them what humans really are." Daniel nodded. He understood the truth of her words. The trial had been more than a test of strength, it was a revelation. Humans were not tools, not fragile observers. They were capable, resilient, and cunning. Karethra's expression slowly shifted from shock to reluctant respect. She had always believed that strength came from power and armor, but the human had shown her that control and precision could surpass even the most advanced defenses. She would never forget this moment. The council speaker finally broke the silence. "Let the record show," he said, "that the human has affected an elite warrior in ways previously thought impossible." The arena emptied slowly, but the impact remained. Whispers spread through the station. Aliens who had laughed at humans now spoke in quiet tones, reconsidering their assumptions. Even Karethra's fellow warriors looked at Daniel differently, some with fear, some with admiration. Daniel returned to his quarters, walking slowly. The trial was over, but the consequences were only beginning. Humans had shown they could endure, observe, and exploit weaknesses in ways no alien had anticipated. The perception of the human race had shifted, and the balance of belief in the station had changed. He paused in his quarters, placing a hand on the cool wall. The calm that filled him was not pride, but awareness. Humans were quiet predators, unnoticed until the moment they chose to strike. The moment had come, and the aliens were beginning to see it. Karethra in her private chamber stared at her armor. It had never failed in her lifetime, yet it had faltered against a human. She clenched her fists beneath the energy layers, a mix of fear, curiosity, and anger coursing through her. She knew she would seek understanding. She knew she would train differently, study differently, and perhaps even respect this small, unarmed creature who had achieved the impossible. Lisa knocked softly on Daniel's door. "Rest," she said. "The council will not let this pass easily. They will test you again." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then we will be ready." Outside, the station hummed with life, unaware of the quiet storm brewing. Humans were not strong in the way aliens measured strength. They were quiet, adaptable, and patient. The galaxy had always overlooked them, but now, one human had shown that perception was flawed. And this single moment would change everything that followed. The sun of a distant star rose over the station's viewports, casting light on the corridors, the chambers, and the observers. Humans were no longer simply spectators. They had shown they could change the rules, and the galaxy would remember. Daniel sat quietly, thinking ahead. The challenge was not over. Karethra would not forget, nor would the council. But humans had learned something the aliens would never expect. True strength was not always visible, but it could be decisive in the right hands. And in those hands, even the untouchable could tremble. The morning light filtered through the station's wide viewports, painting the corridors in pale gold. Daniel Clark moved quietly, as if he were part of the station itself. The events of the previous trials weighed on him, but he remained calm. Humans had made their mark, showing they were more than the aliens expected. Yet he knew the council would not accept this quietly. Lisa Brown met him at the main observation hall. "They're talking about you everywhere," she said. Some of the council members are worried. Karethra, she hasn't stopped staring at the reports of your touch. Daniel nodded. It's not about me. It's about what humans can do. That's what they're afraid of. They walked together down the corridors. Aliens of all kinds moved aside, some curious, some hesitant. Daniel noticed the subtle changes in their behavior. Before, humans had been dismissed as weak observers. Now there was caution and a hint of respect. The council summoned a special session. This time, the chamber was larger, filled with scientists, warriors, and diplomats. Karethra stood in the center, her armor repaired and glowing faintly. She moved with pride, but her eyes betrayed a tension that had never been there. She was a warrior used to control, now confronted with unpredictability. The council speaker addressed the gathering. The human has affected an elite warrior in ways we do not understand, he said. The trial revealed unexpected outcomes. The council seeks clarity on human potential. Whispers spread through the hall. Alien scientists discussed energy flow, armor responses, and the subtle pulse that had disrupted Karethra's defenses. They argued, debated, and recorded data feverishly. Humans had never been treated this way before, not with such scrutiny and concern. Karethra stepped forward. I admit, she said, her voice firm but uncertain, that the human's actions were effective. His touch disrupted my armor. This is the first time this has ever happened. I do not know how it occurred. Daniel observed quietly. He did not feel pride. He understood that true power was in knowledge and control, not in winning or showing dominance. The aliens feared what they could not explain. This was their weakness. It was not force, Daniel said, speaking carefully. It was observation, timing, and adaptation. Humans are fragile, yes, but we learn to use that to survive. We sense patterns, energy, and reactions. We use them not to break, but to shift. The chamber fell silent. The council members, used to displays of physical power, struggled to understand. The human had described a method that could not be seen with brute sensors or measured by standard instruments. Karethra's armor shimmered as if reacting to her agitation. She took a step back, processing the information. So you do not rely on weapons, on machines, or on force, she asked. You rely on perception? Yes, Daniel replied, and patience. The council murmured. Some were skeptical, some afraid. A few younger members looked impressed. The notion that a species so small and fragile could influence the strongest warriors without weapons was difficult to accept. Outside the chamber, whispers spread quickly across the station. Alien soldiers discussed humans in new ways, cautiously respectful, even wary. Humans were no longer weak observers. They were capable, unpredictable, and dangerous in ways that could not be measured by armor or strength alone. Karethra requested a private meeting with Daniel. She entered his quarters, the hum of her armor subdued but noticeable. She did not strike, she did not threaten. Instead, she studied him. You are unlike any human I have encountered, she said. How do you do it? Daniel sat calmly. We survive, he said simply. We adapt, we learn, and we use what others ignore. You have strength, yes, but there is a rhythm to it, patterns. Every armor has limits, every movement has energy. We see it and we use it. Karethra's eyes narrowed. So it is not luck, it is control, focus, timing. Yes, Daniel said, and understanding, that is the difference. Humans do not need to be strong to be dangerous. She studied him, the armor shifting slightly as if uncertain. I have been undefeated for decades. Every challenger failed. Yet you, her voice faltered for a moment. How can such a small creature disrupt me so? Daniel looked at her steadily. Because you expected only force. We do not fight like you. We wait, observe, and act at the right moment. That is all. The alien warrior looked away, her pride mixing with curiosity and something new, respect. Then humans are more dangerous than we thought, she said quietly. We are not dangerous for the sake of fighting, Daniel said. We are dangerous because we survive. And that can look very different to others. Carethra nodded slowly. Perhaps I underestimated you, she said. Perhaps I misunderstood humans. Daniel smiled faintly. That is why you felt fear. She did not reply immediately. Instead, she studied her hands, the energy lines in her armor flickering faintly. She had never felt fear in battle, never uncertainty. Now both were present. Outside the quarters, the council discussed the outcome of the private session. Carethra's admission spread quickly. Humans were no longer seen as weak observers. They were becoming symbols of adaptability, subtle power, and hidden strength. Daniel returned to his observations, taking notes, not for himself but for understanding. He knew the council would continue testing, questioning, and observing. The attention was inevitable, but humans had made their first mark. Lisa spoke quietly to him. "You've changed everything here," she said. "They will never see humans the same way again." Daniel nodded. "I hope they see more than just one human. We are not all the same. Every human can adapt in different ways. That is our strength." Carethra approached him again later without armor this time. Her expression was softer, less aggressive. "Teach me," she said simply. "Not to defeat you, but to understand. Humans are small, but they are more than they seem. I need to know how." Daniel studied her for a moment. Humans had never sought to dominate every warrior, but teaching understanding was a different path. "I can show you," he said. "But you must forget what you know about strength. It is not force. It is control, perception, and patience." She nodded. The armor was not needed here. Her presence alone carried weight, but she was willing to learn, willing to see humans differently. Across the station, whispers continued. Humans were rising in perception, no longer dismissed. Aliens began to treat them with caution, respect, and some even curiosity. The quiet predator image was growing. Humans were not the strongest by force, but they were survivors, learners, and precise in ways no one had expected. Daniel remained calm. He knew the work was just beginning. The trials, the attention, and the curiosity would continue. Yet one human had shown what patience, observation, and subtle action could accomplish. Carethra studied him again, her pride subdued but not gone. "Perhaps I misjudged humans," she said, "and perhaps I need to rethink what it means to fight." Daniel nodded. "And perhaps the galaxy will need to rethink what it means to measure strength." Outside the viewports, the stars shone, cold and distant. Humans were small, seemingly insignificant, but they carried an unpredictable force that could change perception, challenge pride, and influence even the strongest warriors. The quiet predator had begun to rise, and the galaxy was only beginning to notice. Lisa touched his shoulder. "Rest now," she said. "You have made your mark, but there is more to come. They will challenge, question, and test humans further." Daniel smiled faintly. "Let them try," he said. "We are ready." The station hummed with life, and the galaxy watched quietly. Humans had shown that strength was not always about force, that perception and patience could break armor that was thought invincible. Carethra had learned fear, curiosity, and respect, and the council had learned that humans were no longer weak observers. They were something else entirely, something to be reckoned with. And for the first time, humans were seen as more than small creatures on a distant planet. They were survivors, precise, patient, and dangerous in ways no one had anticipated. The quiet predator had begun its rise. The station was quieter than usual. The council chambers, usually filled with chatter and orders, now held tension. Humans had made their mark. Daniel Clark moved through the corridors with the calm patience that had always defined him. He carried no weapons, no armor, only his presence and the quiet power of observation and control. The previous trials had shifted everything. Carethra no longer looked at him with arrogance. Instead, her eyes held curiosity and caution. She had trained for decades believing her armor made her invincible. Now, she understood that perception, timing, and focus could surpass even the strongest defenses. She studied Daniel not as an enemy, but as a teacher, or perhaps as a warning. Lisa Brown met him in the observation hall. "The council is uneasy," she said quietly. "They didn't expect humans to change the story this much." "Your actions, they've caused concern across the station," Daniel nodded. "That is their problem, not mine," he said. "I showed them a possibility. They can choose to understand it or ignore it. Either way, it is done." The council summoned them both. This time, the chamber was larger than ever, with observation platforms surrounding the main floor. Every alien warrior, scientist, and diplomat wanted to see the human who had challenged an elite warrior's invincible armor. Karethra stood at the center, her movements calm, her armor glowing faintly, the subtle tension of uncertainty still present. "The human has demonstrated unexpected capabilities," the council speaker said. The alien warrior's armor faltered, and the council demands clarity on human potential. Humans are no longer to be considered weak. Whispers spread quickly through the hall. The statement alone was unprecedented. No other species had forced the council to redefine perception. Humans were small, fragile, and few, yet they had left an impression larger than armies. Karethra stepped forward. "I have faced countless opponents," she said. "I believed no one could touch me. Yet the human's actions disrupted not just my armor but my understanding of strength. I seek clarity, not revenge." Daniel observed her silently. He understood the weight of her words. She was no longer the invincible warrior. She was questioning, learning, and cautious. That was far more powerful than a victory through force. "Humans are different," Daniel said calmly. "We are fragile, yes. We are not the strongest, and we do not rely on machines or armor alone, but we observe, adapt, and respond. We notice patterns, energy, and movement that others miss. That is our power." The council listened, some skeptically, others with careful attention. Humans had always been underestimated. Now they had revealed a capability no other species had anticipated: quiet precision and understanding that could overcome raw strength. Karethra's armor shimmered as she shifted. "So it was not brute force," she said. "It was perception, control, timing." "Yes," Daniel said. "And patience. The right action at the right moment can change the outcome without violence." The chamber fell silent. Whispers turned to murmurs and murmurs to quiet discussions. The realization spread: humans were not weak observers. They were quiet predators, survivors, and learners. The perception of humans had changed in the span of a few moments, and it would not revert easily. Outside the chamber, the station moved in hushed anticipation. Aliens discussed humans differently now. They were cautious in their approach, wary of underestimating a species that had done the impossible. Karethra herself reflected on her pride and her assumptions. She had believed strength was defined by armor, energy, and speed. Daniel had shown her that knowledge, timing, and observation could surpass those things. Later, she approached Daniel privately. The armor was gone, replaced by simple robes of status. "I wish to understand," she said quietly, "not to defeat you but to learn. Humans are small yet capable of things I did not imagine." Daniel studied her for a moment. "I can show you," he said, "but you must be willing to forget what you know about strength. It is not about force. It is about control, awareness, and adaptation." Karethra nodded. "I am ready." The council, watching from afar, took careful notes. Humans were now officially recognized as a species that could not be measured by conventional standards. Small, fragile, and underestimated, they had changed the hierarchy of perception. The quiet predator was rising, and the galaxy had taken notice. In the following days, Daniel continued to observe, learn, and train in subtle ways. Karethra followed not as an enemy but as a student. She sought to understand the human approach, the connection between observation and action. Together, they moved through exercises of timing, energy, and reaction. Karethra learned that humans had a rhythm that could detect weakness without violence, influence outcomes without confrontation, and shift balance with precision rather than strength. Lisa spoke to Daniel during one quiet moment. "You've changed everything here." The council, the warriors, even the scientists, they are talking about humans differently. They no longer see us as fragile observers. Daniel nodded. Humans survive. We adapt. That is what they are beginning to understand. The station buzzed quietly with rumors of human potential. Alien warriors began to reconsider their training. Scientists debated how human perception could influence armor and defense systems. The council, though uneasy, acknowledged that humans had introduced variables they could not ignore. The hierarchy of power had subtly shifted, and the implications spread across the station and beyond. Karethra approached Daniel again, her voice firm but calm. "I underestimated humans, and I see now that understanding is more important than domination. Your people are not the strongest in force, but perhaps the strongest in adaptability. That is something no armor can match." "Exactly," Daniel said. "Strength is not always physical. Patience, awareness, and control can achieve outcomes that force alone cannot." Outside the station, the stars shone cold and distant. Humans were small, seemingly insignificant, but they carried a power no other species could easily measure. The galaxy had always overlooked them, but now it had seen what one human could do. The quiet predator had risen. Daniel Clark, unarmed and small, had changed perception. The council would continue to test humans, to observe them, to challenge them. But the truth was clear. Humans were survivors, learners, and precise in ways that could not be measured by strength or armor. The rise of humanity had begun. The galaxy would soon learn that one touch, one patient observation, and one calm mind could change everything. Karethra, once invincible, now trembled, not from fear alone, but from the realization that humans were something new, something unpredictable, and something to be reckoned with. Daniel walked through the station, calm and composed, carrying the quiet knowledge that humans had begun to redefine what strength truly meant. They did not need weapons, armor, or machines to dominate perception. They needed patience, observation, and precision. The galaxy had witnessed one human's touch, and it had shaken the foundation of belief. The stars outside the station glimmered, distant and endless. Humans, small as they were, had begun to rise quietly among them, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. Karethra studied him one last time before leaving the observation hall. "You are more than I imagined," she said softly. "The galaxy should take note. Humans are not weak. They are dangerous in ways no one expected." Daniel smiled faintly, not proud but aware. Humans had always survived, always adapted, and now the galaxy had seen the first proof. The quiet predator had emerged, and the rise of humanity was unstoppable. As the station returned to its routines, one truth remained clear. Humans had shown the galaxy that strength was not always visible, that control and observation could surpass armor and force, and that one determined human could change perception forever. The quiet predator had begun its journey, and the galaxy would remember.